Joining us now for World Brief and the review of some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Adefemi Akinsanya. Good morning, Adefemi.
Good morning, Dr. Rubin. Good morning, Ayo, and good morning, Rufai. How's everybody doing?
Good morning, Adefemi.
Good. All righty, well, let me tell you all what is happening around the world. Now, US President Donald Trump says a trade deal between America and China could happen soon, as he and Chinese President Xi Jinping met face-to-face for the first time in 6 years. Now, their meeting in Busan, South Korea, comes in the middle of an intense trade war between these two superpowers. You've got Trump, who referred to Xi as a good friend and a great leader. In return, Xi extended warm greetings and conceded that they don't always see eye to eye, but also said that he believed that China and the United States should be partners and friends. Notice he didn't call them a friend already. Getting down to business, though, we do know that Trump did want fentanyl to stop coming into the United States. He wanted a TikTok deal, and he wants China to buy more US soybeans, as well as greater access to those rare earth minerals. Well, we'll see if he gets all that he's looking for with a confirmed trade deal, especially since the US Supreme Court is just days away from deciding whether or not Trump's tariffs are even legal, something I'm sure China is well aware of when they went in for their brief meeting. Moving on to South America, and residents of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil are collecting the bodies of their neighbors after a deadly raid killed more than 130 people. It was the deadliest police operation in Rio's history. Police say they were targeting drug trafficking gangs, but critics say police often target low-income neighborhoods, or favelas as they're called over in Brazil, with excessive force. Very unfortunate scenes there. Well, coming home to the African continent, and protests have erupted in Tanzania capital, Dar es Salaam, and other major cities as demonstrators denounce the exclusion of major opposition figures and allege the vote was stacked in favor of the long-ruling Chama cha Mapinduzi party. Now, authorities responded with a heavy security crackdown. A curfew was also imposed. Military and police forces were deployed, and nationwide internet disruptions were reported as polling stations opened with unusually low turnout. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan, who was sworn in back in 2022, I believe it was 2021, 2022, 4 years ago anyway, her swearing in followed the death of her predecessor, John Magufuli. It is expected that she will be elected amid systemic intimidation, arrests of opposition leaders, and the suppression of dissent. Well, staying in Africa and Morocco, more than 2,400 people have been charged over these Gen Z anti-government protests earlier this month. Now, of those 2,480 who were charged, 1,473 of them remain in custody awaiting trial. Now, charges include armed rebellion, insulting and using violence against a public official, exercising his duties, and the incitement to commit felonies. Now, the demonstrations took Morocco by surprise after a youth-led movement called Gen Z 212 mobilized thousands across the country to protest the state of public services. Well, there's also been global outrage after videos show 5 Red Crescent volunteers being beaten and executed in Sudan by rapid support forces. The volunteers were attacked while distributing food in the city of Bara, where the RAF had recently declared it had taken control of. Now, the RSF accused the Red Crescent volunteers of supporting the Sudanese army. The Sudanese Red Crescent said others remain missing after attacks in North Kordofan and also in Darfur. Since Sudan's conflict started back in April of 2023, at least 28 Red Crescent volunteers and staff have been killed while on duty. And in another video, we can see an unarmed man sitting amid dozens of dead bodies in the hallway believed to be part of a hospital, is approached by a fighter believed to be representing the RSF. And that fighter raises his rifle and fires a single shot, knocking the unarmed man to the ground, where it's believed he died. He remained motionless in the video. Now, until now, El Fasher was the last major urban center in Darfur still held by the Sudanese government, forces, and its allies. But the RSF says that it hopes to form a rival government in that very city. Those are your well-briefed stories. Let's go to our newspapers, Nigeria and around the world, before I come to my wonderful colleagues for their thoughts. Now, as ever, we begin with the front page of This Day. Now, This Day newspaper has been ranked among Nigeria's top 50 brands for 2025, marking its first appearance on the list. The honor recognizes the paper's excellence, credibility, and national influence. So the CEO of the top 50 brands Nigeria, Taiwo Oluboyede, praised This Day for his resilience and strong public trust, while Sunday editor Davidson Eriekpen says that the award would inspire the paper to uphold its standards. So huge congratulations to the This Day family. Now, This Day goes on to report that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited is seeking technical equity partners to high grade or repurpose its refineries. Now, the NNPC executive Bayo Julari said that the company is reviewing all three refineries to develop sustainable solutions and restore productivity after years of failed repairs costing billions of dollars. He did add that the selected partners must have a proven record of operating refineries to international standards, noting that the move aligns with the NNPC's renewed drive for energy security and efficiency. Let's move on to another paper. Let's take a look at the Daily Times this morning. Now, the Daily Times does report that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has revised this controversial presidential pardon list, removing convicts involved in kidnapping, drug offences and human trafficking, as well as fraud, cutting the number of beneficiaries from 175 to 120. I know there was some back and forth about whether or not the actual number is 175 or not, but that's what we've seen in these papers. Now, the president also recovered, he actually reversed the pardon that he earlier granted, or it was believed he granted, to Mariam Sanda, who killed her husband back in 2017. Now, he has now commuted that to a 12-year prison sentence. Now, according to the presidential aide Bayo Ononuga and the Attorney General Lateef Fagbemi, the review followed consultations with the Council of State and widespread public criticism. They said the move was to ensure fairness, uphold national security, and align with ongoing justice reform efforts. Let's move on to the New Telegraph. Now, the New Telegraph does report that the House of Representatives has rejected a move by the United States to designate Nigeria a country of particular concern over alleged persecution of Christians. Now, lawmakers described the genocide claim as false and misleading, insisting that Nigeria's security challenges are complex and not driven by religion, following a motion that was led by the Deputy Speaker, Benjamin Kalu. Key committees and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have been tasked with engaging the US government through diplomatic channels. Lawmakers also proposed a joint Nigeria-US fact-finding dialogue on religious freedom and resolved to forward the decision to the presidency and relevant security agencies. Let's move on to the Daily Trust this morning. The Daily Trust does report that the former Minister of State for Petroleum, Timothy Silva, has confirmed that operatives believed to be from the Defense Intelligence Agency raided his Abuja residence while he was out of the country. Now, according to the paper, Silva said that his brother and driver were arrested during the operation, but no items were taken from the house. Now, the Daily Trust adds that the Defense Headquarters denied reports linking the raid to an alleged coup plot, explaining that the detention of some officers was part of an internal disciplinary process. Now, Silva himself also dismissed claims of any involvement in any coup attempt. He described what happened as false, and politically motivated. Let's move on to the Daily Independent this morning. And the Daily Independent does report that the steady foreign inflows have been coming into Nigeria, and they are stabilizing the naira despite weak domestic foreign exchange supply. Now, this has rising investments from abroad, and remittance inflows have provided support to the market, even as dollar shortages persist locally. Analysts, however, warn that the currency stability may be short-lived unless domestic forex becomes available and improves, and of course demand is better managed. We'll just have to wait and see for that. Let's move on to the Daily Graphic of Ghana as we move outwards from Nigeria. So in Ghana, the paper is leading with news that there's been a warning from the Environmental Service Providers Association saying that Ghana's waste management system could collapse if the government fails to clear all outstanding arrears by the 7th of November. According to the paper, the Executive Secretary, Amma Ofori Antwi, says waste collectors are threatening to shut down operations over unpaid debts, urging the government to release funds through the Ministry of Finance and review payment rates to sustain sanitation services worldwide. Now, to the South China Post, it does report on security concerns influencing the choice of Busan in South Korea as the venue for Trump and Xi Jinping meeting. It is an airbase that they met at, and it's believed that that's why they decided, just for the sake of security. Moving on now to our last paper, let's take a look at the Daily Express of the United Kingdom. It does report that Hadush Kebatu, who is the Ethiopian migrant and convicted sex offender who assaulted a 14-year-old a girl and a woman while he was living at an asylum hotel in Epping, was given £500 to leave the country. Now, £500 is nearly 1 million naira. And he was given that money because he was threatening to disrupt his deportation process. Now, Kebatu had been mistakenly released from prison before being rearrested and forcibly deported to Ethiopia, where he is now. Now, the government says that the payment was made to avoid a costlier delay, but critics, including Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch, have condemned the payment, calling it outrageous waste of taxpayers' money. Well, those are your well-briefed stories and your newspaper review from around the world. Love to hear your thoughts.
I'm not surprised that Kemi will condemn it, and these are things that are going to give food to people like Nigel Farage to eat up like Kobayashi and say, we told you so, these people are no good. But the rights of immigrants also must be respected, and the ones that do evil and bad must be put out there. See, I think on the ranking of the chart, when we're talking about democracies in the world, there should be a special category called African democracy. And what are some of the signs and traits of this African democracy? Authoritarian incumbent, an incumbent that shuts down every other person from the political process, like Tundu Lissu had been shut out of the political process in Pina in Tanzania.
Yes.
They use the element of state, coercive force like police, military, and they go against people that protest against them, and it leads to chaos. One would have thought that after we had Magufuli, with all his high-handedness and brutish force being used against opposition in Tanzania, that Suluhu will have been a cool head in the room. But Suluhu has just shown that she's not really different from Magufuli. And for those that make the argument about, stereotypes, gender, age, for leadership and all of that, it just shows that most of these pervasive African leaders are the same, from the likes of Suluhu now to Alassane Ouattara to Paul Biya. Same old play. She shut everybody out of the system so that it will be in her favor. Pure and simple. As regards Trump, yes, interesting is talking with Xi Jinping, but you can see the body reaction. Xi Jinping was composed, more reserved, knows America a lot, because there's an exchange program that normally happens between America and Chinese people back in the days that Xi Jinping did come to in America. So I think he had actually stayed in and around America and knows the ecosystem, knows about the soya bean farmers in Iowa and the likes. Well, but Trump, in his usual way, yes, we want more soya bean to be bought from us and everything. But mark the words of Xi Jinping. He wasn't so quick to use all the platitudes, because these are leaders that look very firmly and look at what is best in the interest. So let's see how this their trade talk comes up. But I know Trump, in his taco manner, can go back to America tomorrow and say something entirely different from all the things they've agreed. So I'm not surprised. As regards Brazil and the favelas, this might even hamper the chances of Lula in the next election cycle, because even Lula himself has come out to complain. Yeah, you have the favelas in Brazil, very high level of poverty. There's always gang. The police claim that the gang was using drones and some other, heinous materials against them. But the question we should ask is, was this the best way possible to have killed innocent people? That's not the best way possible, and will never be the best way possible.
Right, so you cannot argue the fact that Brazil has a big challenge around drugs and cartels like this. However, consistently what has been criticized is the way and manner in which the police, during their raids, kill huge numbers of people. In 2021, the United Nations Human Rights Office had strongly criticized the way in which, at the time, what was said to be the most deadly raid, killing 28 people. At the time, 2021, they said it was the most deadly raid at 28. And they had said that they had accused the police of abuse, gross abuse, and extrajudicial killing. 2021 to 2025, it doesn't seem like a lot has changed, because at 28 then now, over 100 people were killed in a raid that saw, because in 2021 what it said was that some people had actually come out to surrender, some people were in their homes, so there was collateral damage, and some people were willing to surrender themselves. But unfortunately, it seemed like they were out for blood and they just wanted to kill, extrajudicially, the criminals. And so this is what we're talking about, whether it be in Brazil or other parts of the world, where by due process, when it comes to the justice system, is not followed. The United Nations has not yet responded, but at least I haven't seen any response yet as to what's happened in Brazil. But now this has topped what happened in 2021 as the most deadly killings, especially when it comes to people, allegations of drug cartels. So the question will then be that what is the way forward for Brazil? Will they continue to go around to forests and these poor areas to shoot on site? Or will there actually be more structural reforms and actually enabling people or going through the process to ensure that there's fairness even in the discharge of their duties? I think that's one of the biggest criticisms. Now, going on to Morocco and the young people who had protested, we had spoken about here, Adefemi, the spate or the trend of young people, especially Gen Zs, who are going out to protest against bad governance. And my question to the Moroccan authorities, as well as other authorities, who, rather than fix the problems that the young people are protesting about, would rather go through the route of, charging them to court on charges of arson, disruption of public peace, and so on. What they're asking for is fix the education sector, fix the health sector, fix the economy. Instead of doing that and actually working and listening to the voices of these Gen Zs, they decided to take on the route of charging them, and trying to clamp down the voices of young people. And this is not the way to go. We've seen it happen many times, that usually this would cause even further unrest.
Okay, in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, the Rio police went after a group called Comando Vermelho, the Red Command, a notorious drug gang. Having driven them out of the city into the forest, they now engage in what became a state massacre and killed in the process 119 persons. 4 officers lost their lives. 115 of persons involved in what they described as narco-terrorism were killed. But the Office of the Public Defender in Rio de Janeiro says, in fact, the figure is as high as 132. Even the president is horrified, Lula, because according to the justice minister, he was not informed. And to kill so many people extrajudicially is something that the entire international community finds very shocking, prompting Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, to say that there should be a probe. There should be investigations into these extrajudicial killings in Brazil. Now, similar thing that you will find in Sudan, which you mentioned. Now, under international law, international humanitarian law, there is a group called persons that are hors de combat. Those are persons that are not directly involved in combat. Now, those persons must be protected intentionally, and they include, soldiers who are wounded. They include, people providing humanitarian aid. And the Red Crescent officials wearing their uniform will fall under that category. So there is no justification whatsoever for the killing of humanitarian and aid workers. We have seen it in Gaza by Israel. We have seen it also in other parts of the world where there is a conflict. So this is something that should be condemned, by all and sundry, because it is a violation of international law, namely the Geneva Convention of 1949 and the additional protocols, the Rome Statute, and also the UN resolution on the safety of UN personnel, and also UN resolutions generally on the safety of humanitarian workers, Resolution 2246 in this particular regard. As for Tanzania, I think Samia Suluhu Hassan is a disappointment. When she became president in 2021, everyone was excited. Women empowerment groups said, it's good to have a first female president in Tanzania. That, she will be different. Initially, she was able to ease tension in that country, but now she's worse than Magufuli, whom she succeeded. Magufuli died in office in 2021. Amnesty International, that has been monitoring the situation, says that there has been torture, there's been a reign of terror, and people have had to disappear. The main opposition leader has not been allowed to take part. In fact, he was charged for treason. He's in jail. He didn't take part in the process. 16 casual political parties with no history of political success were the ones that were allowed. All the ones that could make a difference were not allowed. In 3 days' time, after voting, the result will be announced, and you can be sure that it's the female president that will return. Yeah. Finally, on Xi Jinping and Trump, well, we don't know the details of the agreement yet. That has not been announced. Both of them have left Busan. President Trump has returned. But the negotiations first started with the trade teams meeting in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, last week. And they had said it's only their principals that can take a decision. Now they met at the Genhai International Airport in Busan, South Korea. What were the issues on the table? Chinese imports of soya beans from the US, TikTok, semiconductors for artificial intelligence, and also tariffs, the issue of tariffs. But we don't have the details in terms of the agreement, but it was good to see the two leaders of the biggest economies in the world coming together, and Trump praising China as a great country, and Xi as a great leader, as a tough negotiator, and Xi Jinping saying, oh, it's a warm thing to have a summit with President Trump. In other words, it shows a determination, perhaps an aspiration, on the part of both countries to continue to dialogue. China having made it clear that it has no plans to decouple from the United States. Exactly. So, those are the issues.
All right. Thank you so much, Adefemi. In Tanzania, should we say what a man can do, a woman can
also do?
Not in this case.
Can also do, what can we say? What can we say?